All right, I think we are live. Yep, we sure are. Hey everyone, and welcome to Chef AJ and Friends. Today's the first Tuesday of the month, which means it's normally time for Straight Talk with Dr. Doug Lisle, but he was called out of the country. So instead, you got me and my friend, Dr. Matt Lederman. Dr. Matt is a longtime colleague and friend, and you may remember him from the groundbreaking documentary Forks Over Knives, or as the author of the Forks Over Knives Plan, a New York Times bestselling book, and his amazing new book, Wellness to Wonderful. And even though he's a medical doctor and he could answer medical questions if we get some in the chat, he's actually here today more as my friend and to support me into revealing to you all my diagnosis of lung cancer. So please welcome Dr. Matt to the show. How are you doing? Long time no see, and what have you been up to?
Hey AJ, thanks for the warm introduction there. And yeah, just great to be here and to support you. I'm really focused on helping you meet your needs today of wanting to be caring and transparent and um, just the warm heart that you are, and asking that everybody else receives you and holds you with that care and love that you try to hold everybody else with. And yeah, I've been doing a lot of work, as you know, not only in the nutrition and lifestyle field, but also in what we call connection medicine and how important that is. And uh, focus, especially on doing in nonviolent communication. And I think this is a really wonderful um, time today to employ that, because I know that one of your concerns was, how are people, are they going to be nice, right? How are people going to respond to what you're sharing? And my request is that everybody is focusing on that care and connection, and then we can get through anything together if that's our focus.
Well,
So I'll stop there. Yeah, go ahead,
it's
AJ.
interesting that you brought that up because I didn't sleep. I'm a good sleeper, and I didn't sleep very well last night because I was nervous whether or not this was the right thing to do. And I'm at the level, I'm not talking about nervous like anxiety, which I've had my whole life, but the kind of nervousness I got, for example, when I was on the Tonight Show. And I've been talking to a lot of different clergy people of all faiths. And I've become, this is what happens when you get, there's an old joke, there's no such thing as an atheist in a coffin. Well, let me tell you, there's no such thing as an atheist in a CAT scan machine or a PET scan machine. And
Mm.
I have a hard time believing now that I'm in so many support groups of people with cancer that there's really any atheists with cancer. So I've been talking to a lot of different clergy people about not the disease and things like that, but about whether or not this was the right thing to do. And they all seem to think it was. But one of the things one of them said to me is, what are you afraid of? And I said, well, there's these channels, and I don't even want to give them any dignity, that make hateful videos about me or vegans in general. And so the minister said to me, she said, what could they possibly say about you or to you or do to you that's worse than having cancer? And I'm like, you're right. I'm pretty much indestructible now. I mean, there's nothing anybody can do to me that's worse than this. So take your best shot.
What would you say your concerns are around sharing this? What would you say comes up? Yeah.
So believe it or not, and I'm sure people are going to know, like, how could this happen? She's been vegan for 47 years. We've had a kind of a clue that something's been going on for over 2 years. And the reason we didn't share it earlier is because there really was nothing to report because some tumors were found incidentally. They're called incidental pulmonary nodules a little over 2 years ago. They were extremely small, too small to biopsy or worry about. And so when I'm going to come on and, just it didn't seem to be a story. But some of the people, even prominent people in the plant-based world, thought that I shouldn't share it because it could hurt veganism. And people will say, see, the diet doesn't work. She did it for almost 50 years and she still got cancer. And I wanted to share this because I happen to know that there are a lot of people with cancer that are in my position that are much more prominent than me as influencers or people in the vegan world that are suffering in shame and silence, like I have been for 2 years, being afraid to tell anyone because well, what about, I have a book coming out. How can I be somebody promoting health and wellness and diet and then be sick? But you know what? veganism is 100% fatal because being human is 100% fatal. We're all going to die. And, a lot of people believe, even the more traditional doctors that I see that teach the standard of what I call standard of scare, I guess it's called standard of care, that it was my healthy lifestyle that has kept the cancer from growing so slowly because I do not look, I mean, it took me 2 years to say that I have cancer. I've never said it because I didn't want to, there's certain metaphysical groups that say you name it, you claim it. So I never said it until I started going to a cancer support group. And I said, well, I guess I have cancer now because I'm here. But I always said I was diagnosed with cancer, and that's what I was saying. But I guess people feel that, that some people feel that, like, well, I didn't do the diet right. If only I didn't put the banana and the blueberry together in my smoothie. If only I had eaten more beans or that 1 ounce of nuts a day. But people don't realize well, first of all diseases, cancer especially, is multifactorial. And one of the things a lot of people forget about is genetics. And I don't know if you know this, Matt. I don't know if is it okay if I call you Matt because we are friends?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because usually, even when I'm a friend with a doctor, I still call them doctor, but I feel like we're having a friendly conversation. I have a really, really strong family history of cancer, so I mean, first degree relatives died of it, father, brother young, father older, grandfather, uncle, I'm first woman though, but yeah, so that's a thing. And I mean, because we may never know what caused it, I mean, I know I lived in a lot of crappy apartments in LA, I mean, I can't go back there and test for radon now. And I don't
Right.
even think it's really important to find out, what caused it. And I feel like I don't want people to feel that diet is still not something that they should address because I think it helps you in other ways. So for example, if it has kept my immune system so strong that I have been able to fight whatever this is, because you mentioned that for those tumors to be there, they have had to have been there a very, very long time till they were even be able to see on a CAT scan. And I feel like that my healthy diet and lifestyle then and now, it has kept me to the point where, I mean, right now I have, other than being scared to death and having terrible anxiety, I have no physical symptoms of cancer whatsoever, or even pulmonary symptoms.
Right. So you feel really good. You look good. It hasn't affected your activity. If you didn't get that scan, you would have no idea there's anything wrong even.
Yeah, I wish, a lot of people like to know everything. I wish I never had gotten the scan. Do you want me to just share, the story of why I even got
Yeah.
the scan? And because I mean, you wonder, did did having that test, because how Dr. McDougall, bless him so much, he was going to do what you're doing for me. He was going to come out with me, and hold my hand while I told people. And unfortunately, he passed away. But he always says, stay away from doctors, and I think he's right. So I'll tell this story as briefly as I can. So in April of 2022, I moved from Southern California to Northern California, where I now live and love. And in July of that year, I went to Mexico. I frequently go 1 to 4 times a year and teach at this wonderful spa called Rancho La Puerta. And occasionally I would come home with a UTI for whatever reason. And I've had UTIs many times and I know what they feel like. And it's kind of like lower abdominal or pelvic pain. And so I didn't have really any doctors here. So I went to a urogynecologist, and I went to him and I said, I think I have a UTI, I have pelvic pain. And so he took a urine sample in the office, and he dipped it, and he said, no, you don't have a UTI. And he diagnosed me, or should I say misdiagnosed me, with something called interstitial cystitis. Now, I didn't have interstitial cystitis. And this story is important because I think people have to listen to their own wisdom. I knew in my soul that I didn't have interstitial cystitis, even though I was being treated for it for 100 days. I had raging pain, but I was told I had interstitial cystitis. I took the medicine for interstitial cystitis. See, this is about the thing about just listening to what the doctor said. And I talked to Dr. McDougall about it. He put me on this special diet that was the most restrictive diet you could imagine for interstitial cystitis. You had to like eat the fruit cooked. There was like nothing to eat. I had lost like 10 pounds. I was in support groups for people with interstitial cystitis. And the whole time I'm thinking to myself, I know I don't have this. I don't have this. But it took months to get an appointment with another doctor. And then finally I got an appointment with True North with Dr. Peter Sultana, who's been kind of my guiding doctor since 2011. And he ordered what was called a urine culture. Now, I'm not a doctor, but what I understand from Dr. Sultana is just because they dip it in the office and it's negative doesn't mean it's negative. You have to culture it. And sure enough, I had a raging UTI. And for 100 days being in this incredible amount of pain that if somebody had diagnosed me correctly, a simple antibiotic, I would have been better. But by then, so much damage was done from having this for 100 days that I actually had to be on antibiotics for a year after that. But during that 100 days, when I was in so much pain and I was going in for these ridiculous procedures, maybe not ridiculous if I had had interstitial cystitis, they're called bladder installations, and they were uncomfortable and they were just horrible. I had said to the doctor, I said, please, I just don't believe I have this. Is there any other test you can give me to see? So he ordered an abdominal CT scan with and without contrast, which, by the way, I found out I'm allergic to iodine, so not doing that again. But anyway, this was we're talking September of 2022, and the test came back that I had 4 millimeter tumors on my liver and lung. And so I said, what is this? And they said, well, don't worry about it. In 6 months, we'll do a chest CT scan. 6 months later would have been my birthday, March 22nd, but I don't like to have a CAT scan on my birthday. So the next day, I had a lung CT scan, and it showed that I had a 14 millimeter spiculated nodule deep into medial, right in my chest, about less than 2 millimeters from my aorta. And so I said to the doctor, by then I had a good doctor, and Dr. Neil Nedley, the head of Weimar, so very comfortable with him. And he's a plant-based doctor. And they said, well, don't worry. And so then they did what's called a PET scan. Never had one of those. Don't like them very much because you can't eat any carbs the day before. So it was terrible just eating fat all day, the day before, fat and vegetables. And so then that was April 14th, 2023. And then on April 15th, which was a Saturday, and literally 10 minutes before I had to go live with a very, very special show that day, I get a little text because we use this thing called My Health Online, and that's how you communicate with your doctor, make appointments, send messages. And apparently it's a California state law that they just disclose everything without even telling the doctor. I'm like diagnosed with like lung cancer. And this is a Saturday morning. I don't have a doctor. It took me a year and a half to even get an oncologist. It was crazy. And so here I am freaking out, and I got to go live. And so that was pretty scary. And so, a normal person would have probably told their husband, not me. I called Carrie Otis, my comedy teacher, and I just said, look, we have to start doing comedy again, because I remembered Norman Cousins, and really what I've been doing since being diagnosed is living my life the way I should have lived my life before. And it's funny that it takes sometimes a big slap like cancer to get you to wake up and live the life that you were meant to live and supposed to live. And so that has been a good thing with that. But I find it funny because I wanted to come out doing a stand-up comedy set about it. And I've written what I think is a hilarious stand-up comedy set about being diagnosed with cancer. But anytime I would perform it, people just were like this. And it's like, maybe now that I'm telling everybody, they can embrace it and just laugh with me, because to me, laughter really is the thing that's going to heal me. So after being diagnosed, I just jumped into like stand-up comedy, improv, like I was doing like 10 classes a week. So now, sorry, get back to the medical. So now this is April of 2023. Well, I couldn't get an oncologist because it's like the old saying, you can't get a show on Broadway till you have a show on Broadway. Well, I couldn't get an oncologist without a tissue biopsy. Well, I couldn't get a tissue biopsy because the tumor was too small at the time. And the thoracic oncology surgeon said, I don't want a biopsy because they're not conclusive. Let's just take your left lower lobe out. And I'm like, well, I kind of need that one because I'm a lifelong asthmatic. I also have COPD, and I just don't think my pulmonary function is good enough to lose my left lower lobe. So I was able to get a radiation oncologist to see me without a tissue biopsy. And as she had mentioned, she could do radiation, but the kind I need, they don't have at this institution. It's a specialized kind called proton beam, and they're only available a few places. And until I get Medicare, it wouldn't be paid for. It's like $200,000. So that didn't seem like a good avenue either. And so what I finally did at my own expense, $2,200, I had the gentleman on the show. I had what's called a liquid biopsy, which they claim is 99.6% accurate. And it did show that I had lung adenocarcinoma. And so apparently that was enough for myself to get an oncologist, but still it took like, it's the wheels at Sutter move slowly. So I finally had one. But as it was growing very, very slowly. And I didn't feel like I should come out and tell people about this because even though I've been pretty transparent with my life, having gone on the show The Dog Whisperer on National Geographic and talking about, losing children and having panic disorder. And, when I wear a brace, I tell people I have trigger thumb. It's not like that I was ashamed or trying to hide it, but I didn't want to alarm people, just like I don't want to alarm people now when there was really nothing really, what am I going to tell people? And plus my show is guest driven. It's not just about me. I'm actually kind of very uncomfortable having to talk about me, but I know people will want to know. So I'd rather just tell them now than have to answer every single text and email. So that would be that. So, it's growing very, very slowly. Again, no symptoms, but this is really interesting. And when I was diagnosed on April 15th, 2023, within a month, my hair fell out and I lost 15 pounds. Now, there is no way, and all the oncologists say there's no way cancer could have done that. And this is where you come in because one of the things you teach and work with patients and is how important dealing with stress in your life is that how stress just not only can create disease, but it can make it worse, even causing cancer to metastasize. And until you can handle your stress, it's going to be very hard to heal from disease. But nobody said that the cancer caused a 15-pound weight loss and my hair to fall out. So I went to doctors and the dermatologist said it's called telogen effluvium and stress can cause it. I mean, it's pretty much growing back now in most places. And Dr. Doug Lyle was said it's because I was so nervous all the time. He said he used the phrase hyperadrenalized, that my metabolism has just gotten, through the roof. So those were things. And I was wondering if people were going to notice and say, God, why is she so skinny? Why is her hair falling out? And so at times I thought maybe I should say that, but those were the only things that happened. I don't have shortness of breath. I did at one point, October of 2023, when I was at True North. I've gone to True North twice. I'm doing a medically supervised water fast in hope to shrink the tumors. And even though so far that hasn't happened, I will say that a lot of other wonderful stuff can happen to you when you do that. And plus, it's a place of great care. I did have something called a pleural effusion for 3 days, where when I laid down, I couldn't breathe. But until I could get to the doctor to do that little thing where they tap it, I was better. So like I say, otherwise I'm great. The tumor has been growing really, really slowly until now. And so this last, first they were doing CAT scans every 3 months. And I'm like, that's just too much radiation. So then we moved it to 6 months. So I had my last CAT scan, which was right before I went to True North in October. The day that I was admitted, October 18th, I had a PET scan because the CAT scan did now show that the tumor had doubled. But by doubled, it didn't double from the last CAT scan. It doubled from the first time we detected it, which was almost 2 years ago at 14 millimeters. It was now 28 millimeters. But the bad part is, and I still don't know enough about cancer to know why this is bad, but this seemed to alarm a lot of people, is that I now do have a metastases in the bronchial lymph node. And so the powers that be were really freaking out about that. So I had another PET scan. And then on November 5th of this year, I had a consultation with an oncologist at Stanford because I had decided if I ever did get radiation, I'd want to get this really new kind that targets METs and that's specifically FDA approved for lung cancer. Fortunately, they can't see me. Number one, they don't take my insurance, and number two, they can't treat me now with METs. But on November 5th, which was actually 4 weeks ago today, that is when he officially diagnosed me with stage 3 lung cancer with metastases. And that is when my emotional health really tanked. And so I'm doing pretty good right now. I'm not crying. I'm getting through this broadcast. But as you know, because we talk all the time and you've offered me so much mental health support, not just from you, but from the magical unicorn known as Mark, because I cannot explain what this man does for me, but he is like, if you're watching, Mark, we love you so much. Like he texted me, like it's so hard to explain. Try to explain what this man does for my mental health would be trying to explain why chocolate tastes good. I don't know. It just does. But but and now I've lost my train of thought. Yeah, so the last month has been really, really difficult for me because I guess I have cancer now. If I don't, I got something and it's growing. And so now I have to make a decision I mean, I can still decide to do nothing. That is a decision, doing nothing. That's what I've been doing. But so now I have to make some kind of a decision if I want to do something. And what that something is, there's not one something. And you know, Matt, you used to be an emergency room doctor, right?
I would cover emergency rooms. I'm
Right.
internal medicine, but yeah.
Right. So if somebody came in with appendicitis, there weren't like 500 ways to treat it, right? You kind of knew
There's no,
what to do, right?
right.
Right. Like, so you know, maybe you did labs or whatever. But what people don't understand, unless they're in the cancer space, is there is no one cancer. There's cancer, many different stages and many different body parts, and even two people with the same cancer. You can't just like just slap just like you know an appendectomy on cancer, you know. And so and one of the things I've been doing and you know, I have like basically four mental health people that are help. Like I'm like that's how much help I need because that's what the problem is. But one of them who specializes in OCD, Dr. Laura Bruce, who's been on this show, she had me do this thing. I have like a whiteboard that's as big as this screen, and so you know what I've been doing is exploring all the different possibilities, both from you know standard of care in the United States to outside of the United States, in European countries, in Mexico. And this just, you know, information overload and overwhelm, but there's just so many different things, you know, that a person can do. But because now I have a metastases, nobody, with the exception of some clinics in Mexico, will even consider treating me without a biopsy, a surgical biopsy, not the tissue, not the liquid biopsy that I had. And I had been avoiding a biopsy because I'm deathly afraid of surgery, at least surgery that involves general anesthesia. And the biopsy that they would have to do to get the bronchial lymph node, it's called an EBUS. And so far, I haven't been able to find a surgeon or a pulmonologist that will do it under conscious sedation. But I can get the surgical biopsy of the primary tumor, which I've agreed to do on December 17th at 8:30 in the morning, which is another reason I'm coming out, is because if people want to know what they can do for me, is just like I really am a big believer in prayer. And so at 8:30 a.m. Pacific time on Tuesday, December 17th, if you want to just think a good thought about me, because they will do that without any anesthesia for me. And I'm pretty tough. I had two endoscopies and a colonoscopy without any sedation. So he feels can do this. They do put a little IV in because if it gets really uncomfortable, they give you they have a cocktail of Versed and fentanyl, which I don't really want the fentanyl, but they'll give me just like a baby dose because I respond very profoundly to even small amounts of medicine. And so that was the other reason is because I didn't want to have general anesthesia because when I was a teenager, I had an allergic reaction to general anesthesia and almost died and was in the hospital for several months. And nobody ever figured out what that was. We have a real smart immunologist on my case now, not on my case, like on my case sheet, like helping me thinking of what, you know, working that out. So that was the other reason. But now, so I'm getting the biopsy. And the thing that scares me probably more than the biopsy is getting a brain scan, two brain scans, because they're worried that the cancer might have spread to my brain and my bone, which, you know, I don't want. The thing is I told the oncologist yesterday, I said, if there's any bad news, if there's any, just tell my husband first, you know, don't tell me. I'm pretty sensitive to this. So yeah, that's everybody's
That's
up.
restraint.
Yeah, everybody's up
Everybody
to
love.
now.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. And what I think is important for people. I tell people this all the time that we all have cancer. We all have cancer cells growing in us, and our immune system is trying to fight those. We try to decrease toxic burden, you know, that we get, whether it's through the air or through the water or through our food. And we just do the best we can to try and keep the balance towards that cancer growing or spreading as slow as possible so that we get to live to a ripe old age. So this idea that but just like any diagnosis, right? When people get diagnosed with cancer or diabetes or heart disease, that's not like they were healthy the day before, and all of a sudden today they have that disease, right? They've had insulin and blood sugar problems for years. It just got bad enough that they could diagnose it with our tests. Same thing with heart disease. You've had heart disease growing since you were a kid, not you, but people who had it, right? Since they were growing as a kid, and then all of a sudden it is bad enough that you get symptoms or our tools can pick it up. So this idea that I think the diet and the lifestyle are very important to do, regardless of whether you're diagnosed with something or not, because you give yourself the best chance to fight these issues. And then if you do get diagnosed, you give your best chance to thrive and live as long as possible with whatever those diagnoses are. And I think if we think of it that way, it's not, oh, well, the diet didn't work, or it's, oh, well, it's gotten me to where I am today and I feel really good. And this is some things that happen. There's no diet that's a panacea, and people should not have to suffer in silence because they're worried about criticism or ridicule. And that to me was the biggest thing, AJ, in coming to support you, is that I think the hiding or the whole, the silence piece, the question of whether I should keep this private or not, I think that has such a potential damage, right? Not only to your psyche, but to your overall health. I think a lot of people, this is where we got, Alon and I got into this connection medicine piece, is that the diet is so important. It's the foundation. But there's so many people that don't understand that anxiety and stress and living in a disconnected, isolated, sort of high threat environment, like, this emotional disconnection and threat, they don't realize how much that impacts inflammation and cancer growth and gene expression and even mitochondrial function, right? There's so much that's affected that I think that we have a lot of people with still some low-hanging fruit to address if they really want to optimize. And I think you pointed that out, AJ, just working with our friend Mark, right? And just doing some of the connection work that we've talked about. When I first talked to you, right, AJ, I said, this is not going to make sense. And your head is not going to understand this, but you just got to trust me and do this work. And what I like about you, AJ, is you dove in, even if you just sort of said, "Hey, I'll try anything," and then afterwards you'd be like, "I still don't understand it, but I feel better." And then as you did it more and more, right, that connection work, that self connection, that ability to manage your anxiety and that threat physiology, as we call it, is so important for your health and overall well being. And I think a lot of people don't have the support. Like doctors will talk about, oh yeah, stress, but they don't know exactly what to do. And I think that you're really jumping on that because anxiety has been, as you've mentioned, right, openly, that anxiety has been a big part of your life, you know, forever, right? Has that been something you've dealt with for your entire life?
Absolutely. As Mark would say, anxiety's been driving the bus, and maybe I can get that little doll. Charles, bring me my anxiety doll so I can show the people that. And, it's so interesting because I almost don't want to tell people about him because then we won't be able to get appointments. But the thing is you can't just do it. It's not like you can do a one and done with him,
Right.
And every time and he knows this, I go, this is so stupid. This is ridiculous. And then at the end of the session, I'm like, oh my God. Yeah. So I got my little anxiety doll right here, because anxiety has been, yeah, yeah. So, and that really is, and that is the most profound thing that I'm experiencing because like I said, I have no physical symptoms. I was at the hospital the other day having my pulmonary function test. And while I was there, I went into the chaplain's office. I said, could you please come up and pray with me on this particular day? And he says, well, let's pray now. And we were there for about an hour and he was telling me stuff. I mean, I got to just give a shout out, to the clergy of all, I mean, they, now I don't want to like be this, like, now I'm this deep, profoundly spiritual person, but I got to tell you that, they are so willing, you can't always get an appointment with your oncologist, but people of the clergy are so willing to talk to you, even if you're not of that faith, and for no money. And they just always seem to know what to say. And I've talked to Catholic priests, I've talked to a Presbyterian minister. I mean, I'm trying it all. But this guy was non-denominational. He said, I just finished my rounds and I just saw 17 patients that are much sicker than you. And, one of the things he was trying to say to me is that, by worrying about what's going to happen, because I don't, none of us know what's going to happen. I could be hit by a bus today, but by continuing to just worry about the biopsy and the brain scan, I'm suffering now for something that's going to happen in the future. And so just this idea of just living in the now or mindfulness, it's very easy to say, it's hard to do, but I got to tell you, when you have a terminal diagnosis, that's like the only way you can live, honestly, because you can't even take life a day at a time anymore, or even an hour. So you have to take it like literally moment to moment. Right now, I'm with my friend Matt, and that's all I'm doing because it's just that is really all you can do. And then I have to just always just, mornings are the hardest because, for the last 30 days, I would just wake up just crying. And I felt like I wasn't going to cry today because I felt like that I had already cried every tear there was. But the thing is that I just remind myself like the chaplain said, there's 17 people in the hospital much sicker than me. I am actually right now, I am fine. I am fine right now. I have so much to be grateful for. I have like a wonderful husband. I have the most amazing dog who herself is having health challenges. I have enough money. I have enough food. I can do everything I want to do right now. And I've been spending the last 2 years just worried about what's going to happen in the future. And what really freaked me out is when the Stanford doctor told me, like, well, this is how you die of lung cancer. And like, I did not need to know that, like I don't, in this idea of like seeing a death doula. I mean, I'll see one when I have to, but the idea is like, I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen the play, Matt. Have you ever seen the play Our Town by
No.
Our Town? It's like, I mean, that's basically the secret to life from Emily. Do human beings even realize life every moment when they live it? And the answer is no. And so I find that the thing that's helping me the most is just finding joy in the ordinary. Like yesterday, sorry, I got to get my dog.
Well,
Uh, you know,
AJ,
yeah.
AJ, just take a second because I don't want you to lose your thought
Mhm.
of the story about yesterday. But also, I think when people say live in the present moment, I think that it sounds good, and then people don't know exactly what to do. In fact, I think that's a lot of the work that you're talking about, whether you're doing it with Mark or what we talk about, right? It's being able to allow whatever emotions coming up to flow and sort of move through and to embrace it versus try to avoid it or suppress it.
Yeah.
And then to enjoy and be fully present. Right? Is that how you see it?
Well, I see that I'm spending my life avoiding how to feel what I feel and
Mhm.
pushing it away, pushing it down, and not wanting to feel my feelings because they're so uncomfortable. But what Mark does is he gives us like a safe space to do it. And it's like, you know what? It really doesn't kill you to do it. I mean, it's not that fun, honestly, but I can't say it's fun. But yeah, I mean. I don't know. But this dog, this is usually what I do. But anyway, but it's amazing how just something like this can just make you feel better immediately.
Right. And I think, and it brings me back to the comment you said about comedy, right? When you were making and comedy, you're very present. It's hard to play and laugh and be anxious at the same time. So it makes sense why you enjoy comedy. It is quite healing. It's quite anti-inflammatory, right? So, but I think when you laugh, for a lot of people, they're so uncomfortable with unpleasant feelings or talking about death or all of this stuff, even doctors, right? One of the gifts I think we give patients is to be able to allow them to be fully present and speak to what's alive in them. And if that's their fear, if that's their anxiety, if that's their sadness, to allow that to have space to come out. So when you have your comedy, if people are unable to laugh about that, they're unable to be present to what's supporting you the most. Right. I think that the comedy you're saying, hey, laughing and making jokes is sort of a way that you express yourself, a way that you heal your body and your heart. And I think that if some people are uncomfortable, it's okay to name that, but it doesn't mean that what you're doing is wrong. In fact, I think that's one of the big gifts, right? A lot of what I do, right, is I'll work with people and help them navigate their health situation, whatever it is, and be really just a support along the way. And I've had patients tell me that one of the best things that I do for them is when they have cancer, and I'll talk to people really close at the end of life, nowhere near where you are. And nobody can talk to them because they don't know what to say. And that person can't express themselves or share their pain because they're busy managing all the people that are visiting them. And they don't want to get upset or sad or admit that they're scared because everybody else gets uncomfortable. And I think that's a real burden to carry. So AJ, one of the asks I would have of your community and your friends is to be able to support you, whether it's with comedy or whether it's just you expressing your fear. And there's nothing they have to do, right? That's what I think the work that we do, what Mark does, it's not about fixing anything. It's about making a safe space to allow that to come out. And then it naturally passes like any other feeling. Does that resonate?
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk about sharing the burden of, there's an old saying, a burden shared is a burden halved.
Mm.
And so it just I just now I can do my comedy set because people know it won't be such a surprise.
Yeah. And when people are uncomfortable, that's their own feelings that they don't know how to navigate, which to me is a sign they just need support navigating their feelings. But it's not that you're making fun of people with cancer. It's not that it's uncaring.
Well,
It's
no,
that
I'm making fun of my
e-
experience with it and
exactly,
completely. Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think that if people can come from where you are versus sort of putting their own story on it, they can get in the moment with you and enjoy a laugh about something serious and potentially sad and scary, and you can still laugh about it.
Yeah, well, that I think, I mean, it's so trite, but laughter is the best medicine, and that's just everything I do is just to really just to have fun now. And
Yeah.
so, another reason I wanted to tell people is like, I'm sharing the diagnosis with you, but I don't know how private I might choose to be if I do decide to get treatment, because that's the other thing is like, everybody's everybody's going to have an opinion on what I should do. And the thing is when people tell you in life, if I were you, I would blank, that is crazy because if you were me, you would do exactly what I'm doing because you would be me. You know what I mean? And so it's not always helpful when people tell you what to do. I mean, unless you've had the exact same kind of cancer in the same kind of circumstances. I mean, everybody has an uncle or, a brother-in-law that did this and it worked, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for me. But I don't know, I mean, like the Crocs, Jessica and Brian, they are wonderful YouTubers, plant-based people, and they both came out on their channel and talked about their cancer. And I talked to them, and they said it was like 99% positive. And so that kind of gave me the courage to do it. But whether or not I continue to, I don't want my channel to be Chef AJ Has Cancer channel. You know what I mean? I want to continue to do, cooking demos and guests. And whether or not I share what I do, well, first of all, I don't know what I'm doing, and I won't even know what I'm doing until next year because I don't see that they're going to stage it on December 26th if they get enough tissue, and then even then, you don't just like go to treatment the next day. But if I did decide to do treatment, and maybe I decide to do some conventional or some complementary or combination, I mean, there's, obviously, like if I did do chemo, which I don't really want, but let's say I did, I'll gonna maybe lose my hair, which by the way, when you have cancer, you get a free wig and I get to go to camp now. So there's a lot of good things. I get free yoga and stuff like that. So what I'm saying is depending on how I feel, I may choose to want to not share anymore, or maybe even, take a break or a leave of absence. And right now we're looking at maybe I'm going to be 65 in March, and I was not going to retire till I was in my 70s, but I might take an early retirement and take Social Security. I just don't know what I'm going to do.
And it's whatever you do, you're going to check in, and it's going to feel right to you. Right. I think that's the key, is that what you think today and how you feel today might be different a month from now.
Yeah.
And you're taking it one day at a time.
Right. For me, like really, here's the thing, and this would be a great place to say it. I appreciate people's care and concern, and my phone is blowing up right now, by the way, in text people watching. But when the very few people knew for the last 2 years, just some very close friends that live locally, because they could see that something was up. But like when people text me or email me, how are you? That is such a hard question to answer because in life, when we say, how are you? We're not always really listening for the answer. But when people ask me now, how am I? Do they mean like, how are you? Or do they mean, how are you? And do they want me to answer it truthfully? Do they want me to say fine, or do they mean how am I physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, financially? Because cancer impacts all those things. And so I don't want people to stop reaching out, but I feel like maybe there could be a better question than just how are you? Because that's a hard question to answer, you know?
Yeah. And a lot of people, it's a social nice, right? It's just something you say in passing, but do they really want to know what's going on in your heart right now?
Well, I'm scared. It's like, okay, see, when I have Bailey on my lap, it's like amazing, like how calm I am. So I don't know if you've ever been to like Colossus at Magic Mountain, or imagine like you're on the scariest roller coaster in the world, but you're a person that doesn't like roller coasters. And you know how like you climb and you climb to the top, um, and then you get to the top and that feeling of terror. That's
Mm,
what I feel like almost all the time. But I realize that now, especially committing to the biopsy and the brain scan, that there's a certain point where when you go this way, you just have to like let go and let God. It's like it's out of my control now. And so that's the hard thing because I'm a person, I got OCD, I like to control everything, you know? And guess what? You cannot control cancer or what cancer is going to do. And so I basically just have to live as a person with cancer. It's hard because, I almost feel like I have a C on my chest now, like the scarlet letter, like I
mm,
have
mhm.
because it's not all medical doctors. And I think doctors do come from a good place, but now I'm being treated as a lung cancer patient and I'm not AJ anymore. You know what I'm saying? And so that feels, I do have some really wonderful people on the team, like Katie, if you're watching, she's an integrative nurse practitioner for oncology. So there's certain people that actually want to know how I am, not just how I am. And that's really helpful. And I don't know if they'll watch, but I just want to give a big shout out. I mean, I don't know if you can watch from beyond, but Dr. McDougall, all the help, this man, Matt, he went to my doctor appointments with me and fought with the doctors. And
Mm.
he was there like you're with me now on Zoom, but he came to my appointments with me. I want to thank Dr. Alan Goldhammer. Oh my God, like he just, it just, I didn't even tell my husband. I first called the comedy teacher, then I called Dr. Alan Goldhammer, and then I'm like to my husband, oh, by the way, I have cancer. So Dr.
Yeah.
Goldhammer has just been providing amazing resources and just and Dr. Doug Lyle, and I love you and Dr. Goldhammer so much. I mean, like I had a 3.5 hour session with Dr. Doug Lyle. I mean, it was just like he's just they've just been so great. And all my friends, Tammy Kramer, who lives up the street, like, she just dropped off food one day. Like I didn't tell her like I was going through a bad time. She must have just known it. So things like that. So I really do appreciate but here's the thing, Matt. I've always been the person to help people, and I'm not really good I'm not good on the receiving end. You know what I mean?
Mm.
'Cause I like
Yeah.
to be, I spent my life being a volunteer. Ironically, at a cancer center, like
Mm.
from my 20s to just a few years ago, I had therapy dogs. And for whatever reason, I'd go to the cancer center instead of the main hospital because at the main hospital, you would see med surge patients and they were always grumpy or sleeping. And you'd go to the infusion center and they're sitting there all day. They seem to like a visit. And, I just, I, I just never dreamed that I'd be on the other end.
Yeah.
It's not that I expected to go through life unscathed, but and it's even if I thought like if I did have cancer, like well maybe something down there, female stuff. But the thing that's so scary for me is because my lungs are, is the that I'm going to be scared that I'm not going to be able to breathe. And I've already had that fear from childhood because I'm asthmatic and I know what it's like to not be able to breathe. And I have stopped breathing. And so to have something growing in me that could do that to me is just very, very disturbing to me.
Yeah, so like the shock of being, someone with cancer, especially after, volunteering the way you did and seeing it from the other perspective, and then also the fear of not knowing what's going to happen. It's just a lot to hold, right? That lack of predictability and it's very scary.
Yeah. And that's why, it's just that whole idea of just right now, I'm fine. And I have to keep reminding myself that. And it's like the weirdest thing I meant to tell this sooner, but we don't I haven't had television since 2018, but my husband has stuff on his computer. So I I can only watch stuff if he turns it on. And so we do have Netflix. And so he wanted to watch Emily in Paris while we were, straightening up the house. And it's like I had so much joy cleaning my house yesterday. Like I can't even explain it. It's like because we were joking and said, well, I don't know how long I'm going to be here. Like Thanksgiving Day was sort of mixed for me because we had 32 vegans come and we had the most delicious meal. But in the background, it was like, well, this could be your last Thanksgiving.
Right.
And so it's kind of like I'm trying to balance the joy of living in the moment with the fear of that every
Right.
moment could be the last. But anyway, so we said, well, do you want to go to Paris now? We could maybe do stuff because one of the things on my bucket list, believe it or not, I don't want to go to Paris, by the way, but I do want to go to Disneyland. And I mean, go to Disneyland. And what I mean by that is I grew up in LA. I've been to Disneyland, but it's always really stressful. And you have to rush. And I mean, I want to go to Disneyland like for 3 days, like really go to, like, I want to, now that I have this like newfound ability because I have cancer to see things differently, like, I really want to experience Disneyland through the eyes of somebody that has just gone to Disneyland. And that's kind of it. But I didn't want to go to Paris. But what I was trying to say is just like like I cleaned my house yesterday in a way that was just like, I mean, it made me so happy. Like, like little things now, just sitting with Bailey, taking Bailey for a walk. And it's like, it's almost like nothing else matters except
It's
having
in the
joy in
moment.
the moment, like, I always have been so busy trying to make enough money that now it's like I mean, it's not that I don't care about money. I mean, I need money obviously for treatment and stuff, but it's like it's just, I wish I could have been like Emily in Our Town sooner, but I guess sometimes you just need to be hit on the head.
Yeah, and it's like the hardest thing that you're mastering, right? Is that illusion of control that we all think we have over life. And then it's like, oh, you know, I mean, I'm resonating with what you're saying, AJ, just personally, right? Because it's so easy to go through life and think there's almost an infinite amount of time, even though we know in our heads that we're all going to die at some point. But when you have a diagnosis like this, you really connect to the fact that control is an illusion and getting your priorities in order. And that would help anybody, whether you have a week to live or 20 years to live, right? It's just so hard to do sometimes. What has been a big shift for you? Have you noticed as you like to actually execute that? I'm curious if people are saying, yeah, I resonate with that too. What would be something if you don't have the diagnosis to sort of kick you in the butt to get you to be able to start making that shift
Well, I think they need
sooner?
to ask themselves, are they living their life for them and in the way they want to live it?
Mm.
Or maybe watch Our Town. I don't know because, one of the reasons I also wanted to tell my audience is I had this goal of going live every day for 5 years. I started going live accidentally on March 20th, 2020, when the pandemic began. I had no idea it was going to turn into Chef AJ Live or a daily live show because I have a real job outside of YouTube. I mean, I actually work full time. I do all kinds of things. And but then it became this show that I was doing every day, and I did it for 4 years and 3 months until the doctors really said that I had to stop working so much. And the thing is, now that I'm not working so much, I really like it. I like it better. And but you get, it's like, and I mean that things like weight loss just seem so insignificant to me right now. And
Right,
I've been in that space for a long time, and I am hosting one more year of the Truth About Weight Loss Summit because I was obligated to do so. But when I think about it now, I'd rather just like instead of doing a summit on weight loss, I'd rather do a summit and interview cancer survivors because that's really what I'm interested in now.
right.
And I go to this group, and it's kind of mixed because part of it is helpful because you can really bare your soul, and these people understand. I'm like the newbie in the group. A lot of these people have had cancer for years and all kinds of treatment and repeat cancers. But in a way, it's also sad because when you're in a group with people with cancer, at some point you're going to lose your new friends and stuff. But now I have less tolerance for, okay, excuse my language. People are like, unsubscribe. I have less tolerance for other people's bullshit now that's insignificant. So like when people like complain about stupid stuff to me, it's like, I'm sorry, I got cancer. I'm not going to listen to this. You know what I'm saying? It's
Right.
like, so it's basically just kind of like, people said, oh, you should take, ayahuasca or whatever, but you don't need to do that because you can still choose to live your life with this heightened awareness that we're supposed to be doing all along. But for whatever reason, as a human being, and most people are human doings, it's just been so difficult. So, at some point I'll write this in a maybe journal or whatever, but um, you know, I mean, they say cancer is like not they. I mean, a lot of people say cancer is a gift, and so I'm just trying to look for the gift, I guess.
Well, and being with, I can see why cancer groups, like people with cancer, because they see life differently. I think there's two big things, right? They see life differently, they approach life differently, but also they talk to you differently, right? Like they're not afraid. They don't. I don't know if you've experienced this, AJ, but a lot of the clients we have, particularly with cancer, they talk about how the family treats them differently, their friends treat them differently, and actually a lot of the work is to help them learn how to communicate different, so that you can be treated the same way. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Like if everybody sees you as Chef AJ with cancer, they start treating you differently. They start tiptoeing. They start, oh, I don't want to upset. I don't want, versus I find that you want to be treated, you know, the same, whether you have cancer or not. Is that a concern of yours? Have you noticed that with keep other cancer, other people with cancer and friends in that community?
Well, I haven't noticed it yet because I've only been in the group for a month, and so I'm still kind of getting my feet wet and making friends. But so far, so few people knew that they so far they haven't treated me differently. I
That's
mean,
true.
basically what I told them, and because we did a little bit of Zoom a couple of years ago, and I said, look, if you want to do something for me, just play with me. And what I mean by that is like, you know. I do stuff with me. Like I love playing games, going to escape rooms. Like all they seem to want to do up here is go to do potlucks in restaurants, and that's fine. But I like experiences and I like doing
Mhm.
things. So now I'm on a trivia team, and now I have monthly game parties, and these are all things that were on the list to do someday. But you know what? Someday is now, guys. Someday is now.
Right.
Trust me. Someday is now because
Yeah.
not put off living until you are going to die because it's all, but it's amazing. Like it really is like it's just the simple things now that bring me joy. Like just every day taking a walk with Charles and Bailey. Cause it's unfortunate that she's going through something very serious right now and her time might be more limited too, but what are you going to do? Because worrying about it just makes me sick now. So I think that's the main thing. And I feel so bad for people with anxiety because mine has been debilitating my whole life. And now it's at the point now that I have to do something about it because the anxiety will kill me faster than the cancer. Trust me. So that is
Right.
what I have to get a hold on. And that's where Mark helps and Dr. Doug Lyle and Dr. Laura Bruce and Elma Marie. If you're watching, I literally have four therapists.
Right.
I mean, they all do different. They all work on a different thing.
Right. And that's the thing, just to make clear, is that it's not to not worry, right? It's not that we can't get rid of the worry, but we don't try to make the worry go away or pretend that it's not there or distract from the worry. We approach it and we allow it to sort of come through. To me, it's the same, right? People say, well, if I stay with it, I'm gonna, it's never gonna go away, or it's just gonna stick around all the time. I don't want to be worried all the time. But actually, these feelings are just messengers, and they're letting you know that there's something important they want heard. And once you hear it, they move on. right? So to me, it's what is the need behind the fear? What is the need behind the worry? What is the need behind the sadness? And sometimes if we don't attend to that need, the feelings continue. So AJ, I think you've just from talking to you, over the months, I think your ability to look deeper beyond the feeling instead of trying to make the anxiety go away or the worry or fear, right? I think you are now getting better at trying to be more curious about, well, what does it want to be heard? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's about like instead of trying to get rid of it, it's almost about just learning to coexist with it, you know?
Right.
And I mean I've never had, I mean this was like I never had anticipated that my last session with Dr. Doug Lyle, he was going to talk to me for 3.5 hours. That's the kind of guy he is. And he wouldn't even take any extra money. Like he talks until he's done. But I basically said to him, do you have any tips or tricks or tools, to help me manage the anxiety of cancer? And again, I'm not going to say this as eloquently as he, so don't, but it's basically, he basically said, look, it's not going to go away. And somehow, when he said it wasn't going to go away, it made me feel better about it. You know what I mean? Like, because here I am just looking to exterminate something that's been a part of my life forever. And when he said it wasn't going to go away, I just realized, okay, well, then it's gonna be with me, but it's not gonna rule me. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Anxiety, all of these feelings are really important, right? If you have hunger, the difference between like hunger is unpleasant and so is anxiety. But hunger, you're very clear that means you have a need for food. You go meet your need, the hunger goes away. Anxiety is a little more nebulous. But if we can get to the need in the same way, the anxiety goes away. So if you are standing by the edge of a cliff and the anxiety comes out, and then you take a step back so you're not by the edge of the cliff, the anxiety goes away. Its need is met. And I think if we can look at feelings as they're not good or bad, we don't medicalize the feeling as it's a disease. It's just a feeling that comes or goes and lets you know that you have important needs to tend to. And anxiety, the way I mean, we were with a lot of anxiety patients, people with shakes regularly and panic attacks. And the conventional way of treating anxiety, I think, is missing a fundamental approach. And it's not to make it go away or to heal it or cure it. It's to learn how to befriend it and interact with it and listen to its messaging. The same thing with anger. I work with a lot, particularly men with anger issues. And what they're trying to do is not get angry. And what we actually do is we teach people how to be angry, how to navigate through it. And I think if that's how you look at your feelings, I've seen a big change in you, AJ, around approaching these feelings differently. I don't hear as much your goal is to get the anxiety to go away. I hear much more, hey, I got this anxiety. Sometimes it pokes my head out. Sometimes you'll ask for extra support, whether it's a session with Mark or something else. And sometimes you navigate it yourself. But it doesn't seem like it's the problem anymore. It's just sort of one of the many feelings that come and go in your life.
Well, what's so interesting is, so it was like I said, the last month had been the worst of the last 2 years. Just for some reason, like I could handle stage one with no meds, but like when, it was like this time the cancer is real. And so I remember like, because I was waking up in the morning, I was literally having panic attacks that lasted like 72 hours because I have a history of panic disorder and my arms would fall asleep. And I don't want to take psych meds, not to judge people that do, but they just make me feel worse. And so, but I had talked to this one, it's funny, maybe you can explain what this is in medicine, but I had this one kindly nurse practitioner, Leslie, if you're watching, probably not. And so she prescribed something for me that wasn't a psych med. It was called Enderol because, when I spin, my heart, it's just all these symptoms. And it's like just, I never took it, but just her prescribing it, it's like, okay, I'm better now. Do you know what I'm saying? Does that,
Exactly,
does that,
exactly,
and this,
exactly. Right. So that to me, as we talk about with safety, right? Just thinking, hey, if I can feel safe, my body shifts. The whole physiology of your body shifts if you feel safe versus you feel like there's something dangerous going on. And if she gives you a medication, which knowing, hey, I got something there if I need it, something that's going to be there for me, that's going to help take care of this, it shifts your physiology into that sense of safety, which is, to me, one of the most important things we can do as medical providers is helping patients feel safe and cared for.
Right, because being stressed and anxious all the time is not conducive to healing cancer or anything. Same thing happened with Mark. It was like the mornings were the worst because I was like it's one thing when the day progresses, but with waking up with panic attacks and crying and anxiety. So I texted him. It was like 6 in the morning, and usually I have sessions with him like anywhere from 11 o'clock to like 3 o'clock. And I said, is there I'm not doing well. And, can you ever talk to me in the morning? And he said, well, let me ask my family. And he texted back. He goes, well, I can talk to you right now. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm better. Do you know what I mean? I know it's so weird. It's weird when, I don't know. It's like, it's amazing. So Matt, I'm lovely Susanna, my dear friend and moderator. I'm not looking at the chat today, guys, and I'm sorry because I want to be present with Matt, but she said people are asking how to get in touch with you. I will be putting all of that in the show notes. I'll do it after the show because I want to be present with Matt. But you do work with people, like, right?
Yeah, we have uh all our private clients, classes, all sorts of things. I mean, to me, we're trying to get this work out there to help people, patients, with health issues, but also before they have health issues, helping parents and couples and kids, to deal with these emotions that have an impact on your health as well as your physical health, as well as your mental health and your overall well-being. In fact, I think we should stop separating physical and mental health. I think it should all be just health. And we're just trying to get this information out there. So yeah, AJ, I think you've always been a leader. And what I was telling you, I think before we started, right? One of the things I love about you, AJ, is you just jump in. Like you're just willing to try things. You're willing to go, just to do it. And that's what I hope people hear from you, right? Is, jump in, whether it's to live in your life now or jump into, these new ways of approaching unpleasant feelings, even if they're scary. And there's all sorts of support out there, right? I'm one of many different forms of support out there. You name some other people, and it's to me, it's time to stop. Now is it's a great time, especially before the new year, right? To just get out of this fear-based or isolated base, where you're suffering in silence or you're trying to make these unpleasant things go away by yourself. There's a lot of support out there, and AJ, I think that's by coming out today. Your hope is that you're going to just get all the benefits from the love and support of your wonderful community.
And thank you for that. And I know I'm forgetting this, you know how like when people win an Academy
Yeah,
Award, like and then Diane Wiest forgot to thank Woody Allen. You're right, and you're making me think about, I mean, wonderful support, and especially I got to say everybody in the plant-based community. And I like, for example, Dr. Simran Malhotra, who is a cancer previvor. She gave me some amazing resources, and Dr. Don Musalem, who is a cancer survivor. I mean, people, they're just amazing. I mean, like, I mean, here's the thing. This is interesting because when I stopped doing my show every day, I was at the point where there was regular guests. So for all days of the month, and we had like McDougall Monday, Dr. Lyle Tuesday. And so I wanted to give the people some notice that the show, that at least their part of the show was coming to an end. And what we did is we sent out an email, and then the people that got like the four highest, who you want to see, I was still doing one show a week. But that meant I had to tell 24 of the guests that, we weren't coming back. And so I did reveal my diagnosis to them and tell them why. And, most of them were medical doctors, and they were just, like you said, incredible, and then a lot of them will still call me. And, I mean,
yeah,
it's so cool. Like, I get calls from Dr. Ron Weiss, like, how you doing? It's that, no, it's just, I mean, it's really, really nice. And, you
yeah. And
had,
it's not to be like you're not. The feeling of not being alone is one of the most amazing healing feelings. In fact, I would say that's the biggest thing I do with you, AJ, is right. I mean, I want to help you navigate a path that feels right to you. And that, I mean, there's so much information, right, about get this cancer treatment, don't do this alternative treatment, this supplement. It's very confusing. It's very overwhelming to be alone. And to have that support, I think, is the most important thing, right? So when a doctor says this treatment's going to cure you, you got to do it. Well, hey, can we look into that? Let's figure that out. Let's look at the information, right? So that I think when you're alone, whether it's I'm just sad and I need someone to hear me, I need some empathy, or hey, I need some information, some support navigating information, that you have that system in place. That is essential for anybody navigating any health issue. But in general, I mean, navigating real life, I work with Mark myself, right? I mean, I work with Mark just for maintenance around practice. It's like a muscle, practicing connecting to feelings, because we're not taught how to do that, right? How to navigate all that. So to me, it's putting your support system in place, whether you have a serious diagnosis or not, and making sure you have that community to fall back on.
Everybody, I keep getting texts. Everybody's asking about Mark. We will tell you about Mark, but it's like you can't just, I think what you have to do is show with him because you can't, otherwise it's, you know what I mean? And I'd be
Oh
willing to
yeah.
be, I guess since I'm being vulnerable now, I mean, how much worse could it get? I could be the guinea pig if you want, or you could do it. But it's interesting, Matt, because I haven't read her book, Kubler-Ross, but you know how there's 5 stages of grief.
Mhm.
Well, for the last 2 years, I've been going through 4 of them, mostly the one of denial. That was where I've been living most of it. And then not so much bargaining and not even so much anger, a little bit of depression. But I realized that, my goal is to get to acceptance. But when I was first diagnosed, I mean, obviously I wasn't happy. But it's funny because I remember it, and again, if there's anybody out there in medical stuff, don't be putting stuff in patients' chart. I want to be an advocate to fight that. And they won't, they said, well, we have to, it's California law. And it's like, that's no way to diagnose people with cancer on a Saturday. You should have the doctor call you. But I remember when I first got the news, I was stunned. And I still sometimes don't believe it. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and instead of saying, what, what, God, why? I remember saying, thank God it's not Charles because I
Mm.
think this would be so much harder for me if he was going through it or even Bailey. But at the same time, like he's very stoic and I worry about him because, I said to him yesterday, Colin, I said, you don't have to do this. Meaning, I don't mean like you can divorce me. I mean, he could, but it's like people don't realize how hard it is on other people.
Mm. Yeah, and that's I'm hearing there, AJ, just your deep care for Charles and the impact on him. And sometimes, right, there's so much focus on you and what you're going through. You want him to get the care and support he needs too.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you, when you have cancer, people are pretty nice to you. I mean, I'm not saying they're not nice with other diseases, but I feel like, like even just like simple things like, not, I know it's really hard for doctors to hug or shake hands, but every now and then, you get one or they'll just like touch you on the back. And it's like, I mean, it's, I mean,
I, I think doctors should do more hugging. I think that is unfortunate in the system. Because I mean, what doesn't that just feel wonderful when you get this hug of, "Hey, I'm here with you. You know,
well,
I'm sensing what you're going through."
that's what Mark is. Mark is a warm hug. Like, and I've
Yeah,
never met him in person. It's like, you know how like in Peanuts, I love Snoopy. The Snoopy cartoon. You know how they say like happiness is a warm puppy, and it is actually, but that's what it's like. It's like, like he's on the Zoom, but it's like he feels like you're being hugged,
yeah,
like
and it's one of the weirdest things, right? So you know, I, I've worked with a range of people, right? I was working with a big corporate executive, and we were doing that work, AJ. And he said part of him during it is saying, "This is the so stupid. This is the dumbest thing. This is so weird." And then the other part is saying, "This feels wonderful. This is great. I need to do this again." And it's that, right? Like your head is almost like, "What is this?" And your body's like, "This just feels wonderful." And I think that it's so hard to explain that, right? Because when you explain it, you're trying to talk about it in the headspace, and you have to really feel it to know and understand what's happening. And it's such a gift that, you know, You just can't, don't think about it. Just try it, right?
Yeah. Of course, I don't recommend doing that with everything because when I was 22, I jumped right into going on a mechanical bull and I crushed my spine, and that was not the best decision
Well,
of just
all right. I'll
yes.
rephrase. So before you emotional work, jump
I know
in,
what
but
you're
maybe
saying.
not the.
I was just kidding. But I mean, I feel like I want to do, more shows kind of like because it's like, I can sit there and make kale, but the thing is, I want to do more shows that are more meaningful and, like, deeply personal, if not about me, about other people. And so I've contacted some of the people that, and again, they don't have to be vegan. It's just that when you're vegan this long, it seems like everybody is vegan. And so far, all of them have agreed to come on for a series of special shows. We will get through the holidays, but in January, like the different people that have gone through cancer and survived, because I think that is really what people need is hope. The encouragement of hope, daily hope. And actually, I somehow wandered onto this podcast. I wish I could meet this guy. His name is Pastor Rick Warren, and he has this podcast called Daily Hope. And that is how I start my day. I just listen to him because just the name of the podcast, Daily Hope. And he had said something the other day that was just so profound, which is you can't deny the diagnosis, but you can defy the verdict. And
Mm,
that is my hope, is that I am going to defy the verdict.
yeah, and that is the goal is that you do everything in your power to live the best life and to create the best outcomes possible.
And
And I
it's
think it's possible. To me, this is just the beginning of, a really wonderful ending. And that's the thing. There's nobody gets out of here alive, right?
But it's
You
so
know?
hard, Matt. It's so hard.
Yeah. It is. I can only imagine, right? Just the weight and the heaviness and how hard this is. And what I hope for people listening in your community is that supporting you, right? Not to try and cheer you up or make it go. I mean, if you want to be cheered up, that's fine, but to
Actually,
just
I
be
do love
present.
jokes. If you're, here's the thing, instead of texting me how am I, just text me a joke because that I do love that. You can also ask me how I am, but I
Right.
agree with you. I appreciate
But
all
like
the,
just be there, just to be there and support, and to hold space for the hard feelings versus to try and avoid them or make them go away. Because if you try to make them go away or distract or it almost implies that they're dangerous, and that's not the energy that's not the message we want to give your body. We want it to know that those emotions, even the scary and unpleasant ones, are welcome. They're all safe.
yeah. And I want people to know that I didn't want to do this and to drag people down. I want them to put themselves on notice to now live their lives for today with joy.
Exactly. And I think that's a very inspiring message is, you know, we all have different things going on in our lives and we're all suffering and often in silence to some extent. We're hiding something. And to just let's take advantage of the benefits of community and being vulnerable and seeing that when you're vulnerable, you can be embraced with love and care and support.
Yeah. I know we have to end soon. I'm trying to think of something kind of want to live with something inspiring. So since I've been known for being in the weight loss space, which I feel like Batman, remember that handsome guy, Adam West, and he could never
Yeah.
get, yeah, I don't want to like dismiss everything I've done with a contribution, but I kind of like want to like let that go. But I will say this, when I have known people that had cancer, a lot of times you'd hear their oncologists, at least back in the day, and maybe today too, when they say, well, should I be on a special diet? Oh, no, you've got cancer, eat whatever you want. And so when I was diagnosed, I'm thinking, well, you know what? What the heck? I'm just going to eat whatever I want. But the interesting thing is, because I've been eating healthy so long, it's like really all I want to eat is healthy food. Like, I mean, I've given myself permission to eat whatever I want, because I'm
Right.
dying, and I have made my diet more liberal. I'm not gold hammer perfect, nor that I ever was. I mean, I still eat plant exclusive vegan. I don't eat oil because it just makes me sick, but I don't worry about the little bit of sugar or salt anymore. So I started adding a little bit more calorie dense foods this year because I am skinny now and I am can't seem to gain weight no matter what I do, but I'm adding avocado and I'm adding gluten-free bread. I'm not afraid with nuts, but I want to give people hope if they're still struggling with that, that if you eat healthy long enough, that becomes your preferred way of eating.
Right.
It's just to me, it's like amazing that I just really want to eat healthy food, not because I have cancer, just because it just tastes better to me now than junk food.
Yeah, it feels better. And it also, even if you decide to do different treatments, it's going to make your immune system, that's what it runs on most effectively, right? So it's to me, no matter what you do, it can only help. It's and like you said, you feel better. So why would you do something different if you're not going to feel as good?
Yeah, absolutely.
I,
Well,
I,
thank you. And it was just I mean, it was amazing how we even connected because I had texted you when see again, I feel like Dr. McDougall is watching over us from heaven. And I had texted you because, to tell you he had passed away, and you asked me how I was doing with it. And, the thing about like telling a lie, you don't remember who you told. And the thing about telling a few people I had cancer, like, who did I tell? And then when I said, well, I'm extra sad because he was helping me with my cancer. And then you're like, you got cancer? And I'm like, yeah, yeah, you got cancer. I do.
yeah. Well, I'm forever grateful to Dr. McDougall. He was such a big impact in my life, and I'm glad we were connected the way we were. And I'm so happy to support you, AJ, and so glad that you came out and have shared this in a way that feels really resonant with your values and your needs. And I'm sending you lots of love and care, and just like I imagine everybody who's watching is doing. And I look forward to our continued time together and all the wonderful things that are to come.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for watching. I really appreciate your love and support. And we'll get through this together, or we won't. All right. And Matt, I'll put all your information in the show notes just as soon as we're over. I know a lot of people will probably want to be contacting you, and we will get the magical unicorn mark on the show as soon as possible. So because you need to see what he does.
Yeah,
And yeah, all right. Well,
it's wonderful.
thanks so much, Matt. Thank you,
Uh,
everyone. And please come back next Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific time for Dr. Alan Goldhammer. All right. Love everyone.
Thanks.
Take care. Live your
Bye.
life.